All right. Well, there's some ASMR for you. And what I want to do, let's spend about another hour or so. I want to conceptualize another monster. Just like last time, this is taking place in the Lands of DnD Time, and specifically during their Carnival of Souls. It's their spooky kind of Halloween. Everything is building up. We're making monsters of all different. We're seeing monsters of all different kinds. Well, Shukan, let's create together while you're waiting. Now, the prompt that I want to use for this second monster, there's our first one. We're not talking mechanics. We're going to leave mechanics for later. Oh, off to bed. See you tomorrow. Oh, my goodness. Daily, yeah. Daily, I would love to see what that is capable of doing. Yeah, very exciting. Yeah, please let us know, Daily. So, something that lurks in catacombs. There are all kinds of monsters that already exist that we can borrow aspects from. There's carrion crawlers. Depending on, there's gargoyles, which could be a part of tombstones, and catacombs are underground. Something like a coffin mimic, yeah. Oh, thank you, Daly. If I know someone in the community who's a 3D designer, I'd love to have the mascots designed as minis, and to maybe print those up and have those kind of sent out as fun prizes for people. No, you're fine, O'Sheeps. Go to bed if you need to. We're on graveyard shift. Well, we're on catacomb shift. So do what you got to do. We'll see you later, O'Sheeps. Have a good night, Daily. All right, now the environment. What is the environment that a catacomb would be? Well, often, catacombs are underground. Depending on the situation, it may not always be dry. There could be lots of water or even oil. Think Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It can be dusty, full of vermin as well. There could even be poisonous or noxious gases. Hey, Slaso, welcome back. We're back too after some technical difficulties, but it seems like between Twitch and Slobs, there has been some things happening tonight. But yes, welcome back. We're making a monster in concept. We're not worrying about the mechanics right now. The prompt is something that lurks in catacombs. I want to build step by step the environment and what goes on here. If we want something like a mimic, which I think could be cool, something that was made, it could be a construct or an aberration, or some kind of like a living trap. Because catacombs are absolutely ripe with those who would want to come in and defile them. So this could be something that keeps things clean. It could eat any biological matter that it senses moving. So mushrooms might grow because maybe they grow too slowly. But if a mouse scampers by, then or mostly, it was created. If it's a part, remember, catacombs are manufactured. Everything that's in there is in there for a purpose and a reason. It could be treasures left behind by ancestors to guide the dwarves or whomever into the next life. Gems and jewels. This is why grave robbers are a big problem here. So any biological matter that it senses moving, mostly it is here to stop those who would steal, desecrate, or otherwise interfere with the rest of the dead interred. That being said, it probably doesn't target undead. Would it? Maybe the creators thought that their holy seal was going to be enough. So we could put a caveat: any living biological matter that it senses moving. Now this is an environment that was handcrafted. Though if we're talking about lost and dusty catacombs, something else might have moved in that could eat it. And I would, even if this is somehow designed to be the alpha predator, what else, what could hunt some kind of a creature that was designed to just be on eternal vigil for people who might stop in to plunder the riches? Lucky I am. Thank you very much for the follow. Welcome aboard. And Lucky, if you have any suggestions too, hey, if you're new to the community, I don't know how long you've been lurking, but if you're new, you're welcome to shout out ideas. Even if you're a first timer to D&D, this is all conceptual. This is all storytelling. Hi, Hypnotic. Did the wizards, or did the people warding this catacomb not think of wizards sending golems to steal everything? Maybe not, Tesla. No, you're fine, Hypnotic. Don't worry. We've had a fun night. We did our mini raffle. We've created a monster. We've had to deal with some tech issues, and now that we're back, we're creating a second monster. Is there something here that then might eat it? You've played D&D once, Lucky. Did you have fun? Do you have a story from your tabletop adventure? You are certainly in the right place. We love newcomers to the hobby. If you have questions, even if it's not related to what you see us doing, you are free to ask in chat. Some kind of a fungi. Yeah, we could go back to that, absolutely. Oh, that's great, Hypnotic. What made it awkward, Lucky? Everything can get eaten by fungi? What about this? We're talking about things like a mimic. What if instead of it just being a creature, there could be puddles of water in a catacomb, right? The plip, plip, plip of water as it trickles from above. You're at a game store and there are 5 tables in a row all playing and shout. Oh, that can happen, Lucky. So please don't judge. Now, I'm biased. I own a game store. I run D&D in the game store. I don't think it's ever been like that per se. But please don't judge the hobby based on that experience alone. I think you'll find... Okay, yeah. For some people, the first impressions, that's the big one. Pardon. And I don't want you to think that playing D&D is always like watching this, the traders in the New York Stock Exchange pit. Like, buy, sell, buy, I do this, I attack, I crit, No, I totally understand, Lucky. In fact, Lucky, we're talking about Well, that's one good way. If you step up and you're the one who wants to run or organize, that's what so many other players are looking for. And if you're just looking to play, even if it's online, Lucky, I would also suggest giving Pete and Jeremy a look. We're in collaboration with them this week to make some monsters. And they run every Friday 3 games for 4 people apiece. Newcomers to D&D are always welcome and even get priority to play. And so you play online through a free platform called Roll20. And they'll help you out. It's an awesome community, and I would highly suggest playing with them. Yeah, awesome dudes. Pete and Jeremy are really great. Yeah, Hypnotic, we're collaborating. Melius, hello. What about a non-hostile mimic, like one that casts a sleep spell and then runs away and hides somewhere else in the dungeon? I think something that would stalk, like maybe try and prevent, but if they don't get the hint, you know, so it might not have been malicious. I was about to say malleus. It might not be malicious at first, but once people start getting further and further inside, the tricks get more and more deadly. I'm imagining an ooze, but instead of dissolving, it ends up being a mass of body parts. I kind of like the ooze idea, James. And what if we had it be something along the lines? You know, we say that there's things like puddles of water or even like an oil that has like trickled up or down, or even like a poison or noxious gases. What if we have some kind of a puddle of water that's not water? It would probably be classified more like an ooze. Robo Gerbil, welcome. You just got here? Well, have a seat. You're sitting at a table in a game store. We're talking D&D. We're talking about creating monsters on a conceptual level, so you don't need to worry about balancing the math or the crunch of the monster. We want the fluff. Always. And Lucky, for as much as you see us broadcast this online here, when we're not live, you and Robo and anyone else who's new here are always welcome to join us on Discord. We keep it safe for work, no worse than PG-13. We have a mentor network, so if you have questions, you can ask mentors who are artists and writers and RP creation. You know, people have been doing this for years and years. You know, some funny memes. Again, nothing too over the top. So, you know, if you're on break or something, you're not going to get in trouble for checking the server. There's some fun stuff there for you. So how about this? Underground water or oil, dusty, full of vermin, poisonous or noxious gases is the environment. And we have something. It has gaseous form, can drip in form of drops, form a puddle, and manifest. So I think, yeah, Slaso, if it could turn from a liquid into a gas. Gases are technically liquid. Anyway. If it can turn from a liquid into a gas, and so it's kind of like a mimic, but it would almost be like a mimic ghost, in the sense that it can possess coffins, it could possess urns, it could possess things, and turn anything in the catacomb into a ward or almost like a living trap that would follow people throughout the catacombs. Yeah, and I think those are some of the abilities that we could end up giving it, Lucky. Yeah, as in T-1000 style? Kind of like that, yeah. Super liquids? Are you talking things like plasma? Or are you talking like super cornstarch and water, like a non-Newtonian liquid? The opposite of plasma. Wait, are you talking about that lighter than, or that almost lighter than air gel that's been made? It almost looks like solid smoke. Is that what you're talking about, Robo? Yes, Lucky. It's a super. It's almost, yeah, Aerogel. That's the stuff. Thank you, Shukan. So it's ecosystem niche here, created to at first deter, then eliminate. Whoop. Intruders. Maybe even it doesn't have to be living or dead. We can just say moving intruders. Hey, Technotron. We're creating a monster for DnD Time here. Hey, Average Joe, also welcome. In the course of talking about almost like the ghost of a mimic that can move throughout catacombs and possess things, to activate an urn or a coffin or whatever to try and drive people out, then eventually like rid the catacomb of plunderers. We've been talking about aerogels, super fluidity, the states of matter. So we have something that's kind of like an ooze, except it would be like a puddle that goes and itself probably, doesn't, it's not too fantastic. It's supposed to blend in. It's supposed to look like a puddle of water underground or oil or something, but it can seep into other things and control. Does the ooze clone? If we want it to. Created to at first deter, then eliminate moving intruders. So that would be the living or the dead. That would be that would be mice. Maybe like an ectoplasm, yeah. So it would be like an undead ooze that would be ectoplasm. I like that. Yeah, undead and oozes aren't really combined together. At least there's not too many of them in the Monster Manual or other such books that I'm aware of. Now exactly. This is the beauty of our imaginations. Underground water. So dusty. What it eats. Any living biological matter. So any. Well, it'll eat any living biological matter that it senses moving. Mostly it's here to stop those. Oh, you know what? If we want it to be ectoplasm. Pardon. Any life force it captures from moving targets, it kills. And so that's how it sustains itself. That's how you get this ectoplasmic bleh. Strengths. And now in D&D time, if you did something like Harvest a Soul, if in the meta, if a player dies, they're able to be brought back. Now we could always say that Bartholomew, who's the main quest giver for D&D time, his magic is too powerful and can overcome this. But we could have a situation be as a strength, any creature killed or any creature whose life force is absorbed by the ectoplasm can't be brought back to life unless freed from the ectoplasm by its dissolution before the soul is consumed. So speak with dead on a tomb raider. So speak with dead on a tomb raider won't work. But those interred here could still speak, since their spirits weren't consumed. You made a swarm of ooze ghosts. Oh, Technotron. We'll have to talk about that. Because again, Technotron, I'd love to have you on voice chat for one of our monster making workshops this week. Protecting the thought is, Average Joe, that it may not be protecting in that it has a sense of duty, but the people who created the Catacomb might have developed this creature and sealed it in the Catacomb for the purposes of indirectly protecting it. Or this could have simply just come to be in the Catacomb as a result of the nascent environment. So for example, if we're underground, there's what we talked about, there's all kinds of gases. Poisonous, noxious gases. There's radon. There's radiation. Or who's to say that the dwarves dug a catacomb and they dug it through uranium, a uranium deposit, or again, a bunch of radon is leaking up through, and the radiation had an effect on the ghosts. Wouldn't that be radiant damage or radiant influence? It could have had an effect on ghosts or spirits and or wildlife. And so the ectoplasm took on a life of its own through mutation. So created or survived and adapted to eliminate moving intruders. By snuffing out their life force or manifesting solid objects to better combat material beings. There could perhaps be some kind of a mitosis robo-gerbil, though from the prompt, I'm going to presume that this tomb isn't exactly littered with the bones of thousands of people who've tried. So perhaps it gets a meal every so often that, someone thinks that they're going to be the first one to break in here, and they do so, and then they die. I don't know if there's really going to be swarms of these things. Now, ultimately, the call's going to be for Pete and Jeremy to make. If they want to turn this into a swarm, kind of like what Technotron said, yeah, make a swarm of ooze ghosts. But the mechanics, I want to leave to... ultimately, I'm going to leave to those two guys to determine for the sake of their adventure that they're running and not me. Now, if we're talking that this ectoplasm is some kind of a super fluid, it behaves in interesting ways. Something that it likes, we could even say life force. Life force and heat. It's attracted to it. That's how it was either mutated or made or something. What would disrupt it? Probably not cold. What if it avoided loud noises. Now, I'm not talking, like footsteps or going, ah! I'm talking things that would be like thunder damage levels of loud. Because what it does is it disrupts, like it causes waves in this ectoplasmic solution, and it distresses it. I would say it would get into the graves and feed off the tracks of ghouls going into the spirit world. Yeah, so some kind of like something like that would end up being so it avoids it probably I wouldn't say light. I think light would be fine. It probably avoids water and sound. Loud sounds. Remember, something in gaseous form it treats water as a solid surface. It cannot go through water. And so in this case, it may avoid water. Like, it just doesn't even want to be around places that are wet. It could, because if it could possess an urn, right, by like going inside, kind of filling it, and like as the adventurers are rolling by, just it kind of like falls and pops the lid and hits someone, or someone's walking by a coffin and then the coffin just opens and then sucks in and closes while the life force is being snuffed out. That's easier to do then if there's still like cracks or places where water might bead up or linger that would be more of an interference. And of course we have concepts like holy water or something else where water is seen as sacred in some fashion. And if this is a partially undead creature, then water could just be a taboo of sorts to it. And that's why it prefers a dusty, dry place. And if you're running a one-shot, again, this is the meta. This is the meta to why we're creating the monster. If you're running a one-shot of like an hour and a half, the monster's going to tell the story and is going to create context clues in the setting. And so they'll find that perhaps evidence of things being tampered with is in dry areas, and that could be the initial area. And of course, that's where the tomb robbers were coming in at first. And they'll even find similar tampering in a wet area. Then, after the wet area, where there doesn't seem to be any more Tomb Raider corpses, there's evidence of tampering that kind of we're reminded of some of the tampering, quote unquote, in the first dry area. But now we're only seeing, like, it just looks like hinges are not dusty. It looks like lids, the rims of lids are not dusty. And so there are things that we could have easily passed over before, but now we have a clue if we're being observant, and it's telling the tale of the locale as well as the behavior of the monster, and it turns into be a very super efficient way of storytelling. Yep, bad vibes hurt Cloud. Well, whether or not it's crossing running water, or it not even, it doesn't have to run. It could just be a stagnant puddle, or someone casts create water and it makes a rain or something. It might just avoid it because it makes it miserable, very hard to move. It would slow it or something along those lines. Maybe water slows it, humidity of some kind. Has strengths of oozes for mobility. Most are, not all of them, because imagine Lucky, a lot of catacombs are built underground, and what happens? It rains, and where does the water go? Well, if someone's casting a tidal wave, that very well may end up just... I mean, it would also ruin the catacombs, too. So, yeah, I guess you're you know, it's a scorched earth policy here. We're calling down exterminatus on the Catacomb. You know, so you're like, well, if I can't conveniently get the treasures of indigenous peoples that don't belong to me, no one can. Scoo! And the whole place just gets ruined by a druid's tidal wave. Weaknesses would be, what it avoids in weaknesses can be kind of redundant here. When we get into things like strengths and weaknesses, strengths are just, they're internal things to this creature that it's good at doing, or that it's bad at doing. This is also a creature that might end up having things like lair actions, where it could manifest as a lair action, a coffin to pop open, an urn to fly. It could manifest to make it look like bones are getting up and moving, and even though it's not an undead, that could try and tease the players into using their turning and all this other stuff in order to to try and affect, which is something that's effectively just an item. It's just mundane bones. There's no necromancy to it. Yeah, strength's being creepy. Life force / souls of people who have died. It's arbitrary in the last, minute, 5 minutes or something. In the last minute. All right, Hypnotic, thanks for hanging out with us. Have a good night. Yeah, it might have something like animate object. Now, in the meta, we could get away with this because it's a monster being run in D&D time. So that actually wouldn't be a bad idea, even though that spell wouldn't normally be able to be used by a player. Yeah, it might be more vigorous, Lucky. And as part of the adventure, you could always have... you could always see the one-shot as the group has been hired to go investigate some known tomb robbers that are in the area. And in so doing, they follow the tracks of people who've broken into this area. And there they find, they're all, as they're going through the catacomb, they're seeing that one by one, this adventuring party of tomb raiders has died. If any of you have played through Tomb of Annihilation, there's kind of a similar thing that goes on there. I'm not really spoiling anything. Don't worry. You don't have to earmuff. I'm not gonna give away any secrets. But let's just say you're not the only people in Chult. You're not the only people in Chult. So anyway, in this tomb or in these catacombs here, as part of the storytelling and also to show the mechanics of this monster, they find the corpses one after another of these people that have died in different ways, and this could then allow for this creature, which might be full at first, to just kind of mess around with the people, like get them to leave until they just press onwards and onwards further in, and then the attacks have to get deadly. And so now we're tricking again. It's kind of like a mimic, a ghost mimic or a ghost ooze or something like that, where our players might think these are traps, and the rogue goes up like, oh, don't worry, I'll deactivate the lock on this on this thing, and it's starting to like trying to pick around with thieves' tools. There's no trap to disarm, and then suddenly, poof, the coffin lid just slaps open to the rogue, trying to disarm the trap when there was no trap the whole time. It was our creature. So it gets some kind of a death knell buff from a creature's life force just consumed for the next. We're just going to put X minutes because Pete and Jeremy at DnD Time are going to. They're going to be able to better detail for the story that they want to run. Exactly. This creature turns the entire catacomb into the trap because every urn, every coffin, every pile of bones, with the exception of puddles of water or oil, or even sort of we could say that there's indigenous pockets of gas, but even that part of the environment, it might even water. We'll just say like noxious gas. And because noxious gas might be like super effective against it if the poison's mixing in with its very lightweight, because it's undead kind of in a spiritual sense. It's not corporeal. Well, it's aerogel. it's a plasma. We're just with that conversation we were having earlier. It's certainly a different state of being. It's only mostly dead. But that turns the entire catacomb into the trap. You have to beware everything. And of course, this is going to make players think, well, they're legitimate traps, or they're gonna be like, I bet it's a poltergeist or a ghost. And then like turn, nothing runs away or is destroyed. Oh, okay. Take another step. What's going on here? And the thing can mess with them, can try and soften them up until later when it can possess like a dry armor or something, and then like, poof, there it is. And then you can have interesting battlefields where kind of like a noxious gas is rising up from a crack in the stone floor, or you can involve puddles of water, waterfalls, dripping stalactites that might have formed after the catacombs had been sealed up. Things like that. It becomes suddenly a haunted house, a horrific playground that has really only one monster, but that monster can interact with most things. And the things that it can't interact with, the players might have access to fight back if they're having trouble trying to hit this being. In fact, this is a type of being that maybe there's not even an AC per se. That it just, things pass through, maybe unless it's magical, that things pass through and don't really do anything to it. And so you have to find ways to splash it with water, or to lure it over a gas, like a gas poof or a geyser or something, where you have to somehow use oils or other liquids in order to trap it or to encapsulate it and capture it some way. But this thing would have so I like an idea of like a low CR monster, but it's a monster that has lair actions. And lair actions are things that it can do because it's in its own territory. It's in its own environment. Lair actions to manipulate the catacombs and make almost all of the area into a consistent death trap to the unwary. If a sword won't hit it, how will water? again, we could say water intrinsically has special properties. Or if we say a non-magical sword can't hit it. So magical weapons can, and magic can, and even mundane, let alone other types of water can as well. You could have the 5e ghost thing where if the monster ends its turn on the tile of the player, it does damage to them. As like a possession? Although I would probably say that it can't possess people because we are water bags. And so it really just wants to beat us until we die and then consume our dry souls. Oh, just being in the space. Oh, okay. So weaknesses, water, and other liquids. Thunder damage, or very loud, mundane noises. Can't directly interact with water bags, i.e. living creatures. So it must use everything else to get them to cease living in order to consume its essence. Incorporeal movement. A ghost can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. It takes 5 force damage if it ends its turn inside an object. So then, if not moving through, per se, because it's not necessarily incorporeal, it might be partially. Again, think kind of like gaseous form. But what I like Technotron would be something like a swarm where it can occupy the same space, and if it does, then things can happen. All right, so let's talk about attacks. Again, I'm not worried about damage. I'm not worried about proficiencies and all this other stuff. So some attacks that it can make. It can animate objects to attack on its behalf. By itself, it can occupy... Ooh, this is extra devious. If this kind of, like, not truly incorporeal, but if this creature is occupying the same space as someone, and an attack is made against it, you might actually end up hitting the person that is surrounded by it. So by itself, it can occupy the same space as a large or smaller living creature. A creature that starts its turn in the same area as the monster takes whatever X necrotic or cold damage. And what if it almost forms a seal? You know, if it can't get in, maybe it will try and suffocate. And again, we can leave clues as to all the different attacks as bodies littered at the beginning of the dungeon. And is considered to be suffocating. Although I think suffocation is just, it's a matter of rounds. So maybe, and, can't breathe. Be cool if I had pack tactics with times around it, like a barrel or a grave. Oh, with items. Well, yeah. So it would probably just do that to try and beat people down. It's trying to smother someone and or beat it up first and get it really kind of beaten to a pulp and then kind of just settle down on it. The monster can move with the character as a reaction up to its speed if it didn't move on its turn. That way it's stuck on the it's kind of stuck on the person. And so they would have to be very careful. That said, there should be a way to, to get it to, and of course that could be done magically or mundanely through loud noises, or maybe even just by spraying it with water or creating water. And so if you put the tools to help to wary players in the dungeon or the circumstance, then yes, you're creating a deadly situation where you have this ectoplasmic drape suffocating a player, preventing it from casting verbal spells and such. However, through magic or mundane means, the other members of the party can make it flee and get out of there. Loud noises, yes. It works as a crown of madness. Oh, so this is, you think this is kind of a possession, Average Joe? RoboGerbil asks, can it create illusions? I don't know if illusions are really something that it would need to do or have developed in this environment. If we wanted to create a very nuanced monster, maybe, if it ate a wizard or something beforehand, it could learn some spells that it could cast, and an illusion would be a part of it. But I think at its heart, and especially for a one-shot RoboGerbil, we're looking at some kind of an ectoplasm that developed mostly naturally, somewhat naturally, in these catacombs by being just this perfect combination of, radon gas and souls and protective magics that were put on the catacombs to try and keep people away. And we just had this perfect storm that creates a kind of an aberration that just stalks and finds the things that the magic, this animating magic was compelled to keep people out. And yet we also have this noxious gas, which is meant to be almost like absorbed into people. It changes them like this. So that was the trigger for it. And then we have the souls of the departed, and it's adding a little bit of a spooky air and more of maybe more of a corporeal manifestation for even if it's a very light one. A corporeal manifestation, kind of like how ghosts are. They're incorporeal, but they can still be interacted with to a degree. And so the souls, enough souls or soul stuff kind of gathered. Then you had the combination of the magic, the protective magics, and then the catalyst was maybe a bunch of radon gas that was leaking in here the whole time. Ended up mutating everything together into this thing that just is not undead, not ooze, but it's an undead ooze. Aberration, but it's not an aberration, that lives to serve out the magical compulsion to protect this place, but does so through creepy necromancy stuff, like animating objects to fly out and attack people, or to just smother them and eat their soul. Not a possession, it would parry physical attacks to hit friendlies in range, since it's wearing the person while suffocating. If we're talking, that's my elbow on my wooden desk, not my. I swear it's a new chair, everyone. No, but seriously, it was that. So I don't want you to think I'm being rude on stream. I don't want to overcomplicate it, and I don't think that illusion magic might have played a part in the tomb, maybe masking the entrance. But if we're talking about a place that has been, maybe has an abjuration, sealing away souls or protecting, and even maybe a little splash of necromancy magic, such as, gentle repose. You know, it's picking up the flavor of that. You know, if you want to give it the cantrip, you know, why not? We can suggest it to Pete and Jeremy. Maybe it picked up the minor illusion cantrip as well. So defenses immune to non-magical slashing, piercing, bludgeoning damage. No, you're fine, James. I'm happy. I want this to be. I want you all to, if an idea comes to mind, let it out. Let's have fun. Let's talk about this. Oh, cool. All right. Average Joe, thank you for joining us as long as you have. Rip your phone. If you haven't joined us on our Discord, please do so, because all this week is a monster creation workshop. And we're going to have a lot more fun outside of just concepts. We're going to talk about math. We're going to talk about stat bars and stuff, too. So we're going to continue what we're starting tonight with some basic, just some, you know, what a bird's eye level. Sorry, it's 4 a.m., so I'm stammering a bit. And then we're going to hit the ground, and we're going to get into the crunch of the monsters as well. So I think we can have something immune to non-magical SPP damage, resistant to necrotic damage, radiant damage, as it was made from radiation. Resistant to necrotic, radiant, it would still be poisoned. Acid would be fine. Fire, I think, would be normal. Welcome back, Raven. We're almost finished with this monster. I think cold. What is H2G2, James? Oh, durr. I should have picked that. Shame on me. I'm going to blame that it's very late for me not picking that up.
Eins tot and eins Gache.
All right, Shukan. We'll get to that momentarily here. Immune to non-magical SPB damage, resistant to necrotic, radiant, and cold damage. Psychic would be fine. And although we should probably put Vulnerable to thunder damage. Low. Probably has a low AC. It's not exactly difficult to hit. It's just difficult to... It's difficult to do anything to it. Low AC. And in that regard, low hit points as well. Because this thing is almost going to be like a Shedinja, I think, in Pokemon terms. Where it has one hit point. It doesn't have one hit point. It has one hit point, but it is, it's a son of a gun to hit. AC, hit points, strength, and con. High, dex, int, whiz. Charisma. Proficient in dex and whiz saves. Perception skill. Oh, Raven. So a low strength score means that like a gust of wind can blow it away, which I think is absolutely fine. Low con would mean that poison damage and necrotic damage. I mean, poison damage, it can be damaged pretty well. Poison damage is pretty prolific as well. I think that would work. That would work out well for it. And it, you know, it's a necrotic. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's necrotic and acid and poison. I think are all con saves. And so necrotic is resistant. I don't know if thunder damage is anything about con aside from maintaining concentration. But I think this works out very well for what we're going for here. So we have a very hard to do anything to creature that is capable of like kind of using animate objects on the things around it that are just constantly barraging the party. And so, and especially if this thing has sort of like candy coated or jelly coated another party member, that party member can still swing. You're just on a timer of minutes equal to your. So, I mean, it doesn't last that long, but you're effectively taking someone out who can't shout or cast spells with verbal components, and maybe spells or like there's a chance of sharing damage with the creature because it's just like a film. It's a film over the target. Any attacks, any damage dealt to it while coating another creature is split with the coated creature. And now let's go to, real quick, as a lair action, It also can cast animate objects at will with a possible cap of size and number in order to ensure it doesn't need to concentrate. Since this is a lair action. Hi, King. No, Shukan, I understand. You prioritize what you have to prioritize. I like it. So we have not even really a glass cannon per se. We just have, we have an evasion. We have an evasion-based person, and so the attacks, like, you gotta gun down. You gotta somehow bring down this resistant, very, nimbly dodgy character, while you're just being constantly, like, you can fight against the other creatures as well, or you just have to weather the attacks while you're focus firing on this. It's not a ghost, but we'll say it's a ghost. While you're focus firing on the ghost, but if you're focus firing on the ghost, the person it's possessing is also taking damage, and if that person dies, then it gets reinvigorated with the past person's soul, and it'll leap onto another person. I like it. Hey, Delcorin, time to start making your own version of Coruscant and start building into the sky.